folks. Welcome back to Talentless. Excited to be here again with you. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you've been listening for a while, I want to thank you. I don't think we take enough time to do that to our fans, so thank you so much for listening.
Okay, but here, hold on, because we do have two people on today, and I think the only way to discuss this is to also admit how we met them, which I find to be a hilarious story, personally. Speaking of fans, to this day, I still think it's a lie. I don't think it's true. But I will say, Des and I were at HR Tech, where none other than Mike Pedito, who I swear somehow gets a shout out almost every single episode. And I don't think he's ever listened to one, which that's good. That's good. He'll never know. It'll be his best kept secret. But we was, coming around with the podcast over there at HR Tech. And as we were zooming past him, he's like, hey, your fans are here. And we were like, huh? Because we thought that these people were all for Pedito. And then he's like, no, they came here to see you. And I was like, so now hold on, sir. You're out here blocking our blessings? Like, what? So anyway, the point is that we got to meet two very, very lovely ladies because of this wonderful incident. And so, Des, please go ahead and do your
So
wonderful
if you haven't
intro.
figured it out right now, we are joined by Victoria Gates and Lorna Erickson, expert interviewers. And I think they've got a wondrous podcast called Don't Tell Me About Yourself podcast, which I listened to many times. It's just really, really excellent. And so if you hadn't listened to that, please tune in. It's wild. So today we're talking about interviewing in a wild job market, right? With the addition of AI and all the crazy that we've got going on right now in interviewing, this is a hot topic, friends. And for those that listen to us regularly, you'll know that last week we had on a AI voice interviewer CEO. These are the times we start talking about what interviewing means, what it doesn't mean, how it should be done correctly, and these ladies are built to do it. Victoria has hired more than 1,500 people and has spent years helping leaders refine how they interview and make better use of candidate time. Lorna has spent nearly 2 decades studying what actually works for interviewers, developing case studies, testing methods through more than 5,000 interviews, and training organizations around the world to interview with more consistency and accuracy. Together, they built expert interviewers. I am so glad to have you here and so glad to be discussing this topic today. So welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you so
That's so nice. And you guys aren't the only ones where Mike makes it onto all your podcasts, because he doesn't know it, but he's been on the majority of ours, and I don't think he's listened to ours either. He's never said, hey, guess what? I heard my name on your podcast, so I'll call him out on that later.
Yeah, we'll keep calling him out in both of ours and just wait till he never hears it, and we'll talk about it together.
Well, and how I became acquainted with you all was like your wonderful images and cartoons and posts that you guys make on LinkedIn is how I became familiar, seeing y'all's faces. And then I think it was RecFest maybe, or RecFest, that we then had a few moments where we ran into each other and saw each other at a few different things, and it was just awesome. So
it's
really
awesome
happy
to be in
the
space and have people like you in our circle. And we did the cartoons because who wants to look at us for real? I mean, nobody wants to look at us.
Cartoons are more fun anyway. It's just like way more fun, and you can do different things.
Doing it.
Yeah.
I have a really good time doing it. So I want to jump right in because I think this topic is going to take the whole span of time. But I want to start like really big picture. So for the both of you, what feels the most broken right now in interviewing, especially now that we have the introduction of AI into that mix? I'll start with you, Lorna.
Sure. One of the things that is the most broken right now, as all people are navigating how to interview with AI on the candidate side or the hiring manager side, the piece that's the most broken to me right now is that each side doesn't know what they should tell the other side. And so then they're just holding on to this information and not being very transparent about how they're using it to make their decisions, or how they use it to apply for jobs, or how they use it to do their resume, or how they use it to interview. And instead, it's a skill that everyone's going to need. So why not just talk about it out in the open and just say, hey, as an interviewer, here's how we use AI in our processes. Here's how we want you to use AI as a candidate. And these are our boundaries. These are our rules. Are you cool with that? And then, yes, it's like having that understanding on the front end would make such a big difference in this world of interviewing with AI.
Yeah, it's weird to me. It's like the unthing said in like these, sign up for your next interview or your first round, but they're not even really telling you you're going to show up with an AI bot sometimes. Right? Isn't that wild? It's wild. Like, you're not going to be talking to a human, by the way. You're going to talk to this AI function, and you're going to have to deliver on that, whether that be video or just straight voice.
Right. But as long as they know on the front end, some candidates are okay with this, because some of the feedback that we hear is that it's like, wait, it's on my time, when I'm free, when my kids are in bed, or whatever it is. Like, it can still work. Some people say it's not human enough, but it can still work as long as there's some transparency on the front end.
I've talked about this numerous times. I've been on a couple of AI interviews, and I actually like it. Now, they were just voice. I don't have to show my craziness. I was probably, in my pajamas when I did it. But to me, I was able to craft the message really succinctly. I was able to do it on my time when I knew everything was not crazy in my home. And I really didn't hate it. And I always say I would love to see the back end of what happened at the back end of that. But from the front end as a candidate, it didn't distress me as much as I thought it was going to.
Yeah. And I think I'll have Victoria speak to this part, but when we talk about the explainability component with the AI and hiring, I think that's probably been one of the biggest things we've talked about recently. Is that right, Victoria?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, explainability is critical. Like, so many companies are starting to get caught up in not having explainable decisions. We've named them in the past, but I think if you just Google AI decisions or AI lawsuit in hiring, like, you'll see them. Because I think what's funny is, like, so many people are saying, like, AI is breaking hiring. AI is breaking hiring. It's not. Hiring is already broken. AI is just exposing that it was already broken. The interview processes are broken. Like, the AI isn't the problem. Your crappy interview process is. Like, that's what it is. And it's been the problem, but we're just seeing it more. And I think that Lorna brings up a good point that if you're having trouble with AI not being, your decisions are not explainable with AI, it's because they were never explainable probably in the first place. And you were deciding on gut feeling or making decisions off of information you shouldn't have been anyway. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're hearing a lot of that. And we're talking a lot about it to hopefully combat some of that, because we're just seeing everybody rush, like the internet rush. Like, everybody's rushing to just implement AI. We need everything AI. And we're going, well, hold on. Like, is the process you're applying AI to worth automating? Have you even stopped to think about that? And we really, that's been our battle cry, I would say, this year, wouldn't you say, Lorna?
Yeah, absolutely. High adoption rate, low guardrails. Wild West.
Love that.
Yeah. No, first of all, I like the concept of explainability, because I just say, like, what's the logic? Like, what are the logics that we're using? What are the parameters? Will it make final decisions? Will it just do, like, where will it sit? Will it be in a candidate holding system? Like, all these different questions around AI. And I think, one, you're exactly right. If your process is broken and all you're doing is automating brokenness, like, you're just making sure it has that good impact, but it's a broken impact. So I definitely think that what has kind of occurred is, I find it interesting how many talent professionals don't really understand the core components, outcomes, impacts, or, like, ways to actually framework and structure a true, genuinely good interview. Like, I feel like we've gotten away from, like, I can't tell you how many recruiters I've been like, okay, what is an interview for? Like, what, and its bare essence, what is that? And so many are just like, well, I'm just reviewing and doing. And it's like, this is an exchange of information. This is something where we're assessing content of what's coming out of their mouth, and we're assessing delivery of how they package said content. And so for me, I feel like the biggest difference, and this was something we talked about on the show a bit ago, between AI and human intelligence is going to be judgment. Like, that is the biggest skill set that will be coming out of this AI bubble and everything like that. Is how good are you with your judgment? Because that's what's going to differentiate you. Because if you remove yourself from the process, if you do whatever and lean on AI, then you're saying your judgment isn't actually worth it, and AI can do what your judgment can do. So, okay, anyway, going back to something else.
Yeah.
No, I loved what you said, because I think you're so right. Interviewing is one of the least trained skills. There's a lot of training and corporate that we see, but why our company exists and why we built this is because we know that, like, most people are just, you interviewed for a job and you got one, so you're qualified to interview. Or here's this list of questions that I've been using for 10 years. Here, just go interview someone. Like, that's how we see. So you're spot on. And that leads to most interviews being basically opinion collection, not evidence collection, which is what we see and why things aren't explainable. Because if you're just collecting opinions, how are you going to explain your decisions off of your opinions? They're not right.
You're not right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would love to understand how you work with clients, and both of you work with clients to identify what the core problem is and then assess how they move through kind of that process to get to better interviewing. Because I would love to understand it as well. That would be great for me to hear.
Well, there's a couple different, when we talk about like helping clients to identify their core problem, it's going to depend. Everything's going to be different for every client, but there's a couple major red flags that I notice right away where I'm like, ooh, something's off. Like that's bad. And oftentimes all I have to do is hear a hiring manager's feedback about a recent interview. That usually sounds like I felt like they were okay. I can't hire them, but I can't put my finger on it. They're going to do great. I can just feel it. You know, like who knows what, right? But their feedback is really just vague and opinion-based and gut feelings. So that's one indicator that, ooh, like something is wrong. The other indicator that we notice, we call this like interview process management. So if we're noticing that there is a high withdrawal of candidates after that second interview, who are they meeting with? What are they asking? You know, what kind of vibe is in that room to make a candidate leave every time after that interview? So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but when you look at the data from interview to interview ratio, you can identify some holes in their process. Maybe the whole process isn't broken. Maybe it's one hiring manager. And that is the person who's great at their job and has never been trained to interview. So hiring is a leadership skill. And if they haven't been given that skill and taught how to do it right, then they're going to be that weak link in the process. So a long way of saying there's lots of different ways we help hiring managers and companies to assess where their hole is in their process. But once we get there, we always start them at the very beginning, no matter what. And that is helping them to define their own right answers. So we'll get the teams together. Anyone that's involved in that interviewing process, anyone that's has skin in the game about how this person's going to work out in the job, we get them together and have them do what we call a talent assessment team builder. It's like, how do we determine what success looks like in our company? Yeah. Starting from square one, if you can build that solid foundation, the rest of it should go pretty well.
No, the main thing
I do think identifying the core problem. I think I've gone into organizations and like tried to assess what their problem is. And so many times it is the interviewing. That someone's gone on a gut feeling, that someone said, this is how I feel, or there was some nepo going on, or whatever is happening, right? Yeah. And like now we have this person in the seat and we're mad when they don't perform. Well, by the way, we didn't set them up correctly because we interviewed them wrong from the start, right? And that's a really tough thing. I really do. I want to know why you think that we're still in this day and age relying on gut feeling. I mean, it's been proven it doesn't work, right? So why are we still doing that?
Yeah, because it feels really good. And because people are always saying, like, trust your intuition, trust your gut, which is like, what do we always say? Great at great at the roulette table, right? Mm-hmm. But not when you're gambling with 50,000, 30,000, 5 figures, 6 figures of your company's money, right? Like if you're gambling on your own, great, you should be trusting your gut. But if you're making a decision that's going to have impacts both fiscally and sometimes emotionally, but definitely long-term really could be detrimental or really positive impacts on a company, on your business, et cetera. Like, is relying on your gut solely the thing you want to do? Like for me, that's what I think about. Like it's easy to do. We're being told to do it in so many other aspects of our lives, and it feels really nice. Like it feels safe, right? It feels good. And it's just so biased and so like not appropriate in this instance, but so many people I think hold on to it because it feels really good. What do you think?
So I've had so many managers say it to me that I actually have a quote that I usually respond with, and it is this.
Ooh, I love it.
Gut feelings is not an EEOC qualification that will pass for that. But the point is that no, gut feeling isn't like a qualifying assessment that the EEOC is going to be like, oh, that works for us. That's going to pass the bridge. No, not at all. So kind of what Lorna said, this inability to articulate what it is that they're missing, because you don't really know what it is that you're looking for, because you never even did the proper piece of doing the talent infrastructure. So that part where you're talking about response rubrics, getting all the peer interviewers aligned, getting everyone speaking in the same echo chamber of mindset, so that way we're going for the same goal. And another thing that's super important is the interviews are the determining factors of who gets what money, when, where, how. And so this is the pivot point with how you decide, will this budgetary investment of a $100,000 salary be worth it or not? Is that small pivot of time and how we assess and how they show up. And so if we're not even able to maintain like a stable environment of consistency and equity, then we're already jeopardizing ourselves with what it is that we bring with our outcomes. And we're setting ourselves up for failure because we're not even tending to what our needs actually are, how we can assess and articulate them when they're not met, and then what is it that we're doing to actually assess that delivery and that content of whatever it is. I just find it so interesting because it's such a pivotal part, and salary is the number one budgetary constraint of a business.
And we still don't focus on it. I mean,
No one
how
does.
many years of
and you know
saying
why?
the same damn thing do
Right.
we need to say? Like,
Exactly. But one of the reasons why that nothing has changed in decades is because of people's ego and the status quo. It's amazing to me how defensive people are of their own bad interviewing processes. And we approach them gently.
This episode of the Talentless podcast is brought to you by Do Better Consulting. Hiring is broken. Job searches are broken. And honestly, most career advice out there is just recycled nonsense. Do Better Consulting exists for people who are done guessing. They work with mid to senior leaders, founders, and talent teams to get clear on their signal, how they show up in the market, how they hire, and how decisions actually get made. No fluff, no templates just to say you have them. Just strategy, structure, and honest feedback that actually works. If you're tired of spinning, it might be time to do better. Head to dobetterconsulting.net.
It's hard to ask for help or for training in something that's been assumed for so long.
right.
It's like, you're a human, you have gut feelings, you can do this. And then all of a sudden for somebody to say, I don't got this, it's a really vulnerable position to be in. And people who are in position of power in companies, they have a tough time admitting that, right? And so Victoria and I have always talked about, like, our biggest competitor is not another company. We make friends with all the other companies that do what we do. Our biggest competitor is the status quo, is getting the people out of their own heads, out of their own ego, and just saying, you know what, there's actually a better way to do this. We can help you.
Like the way things have always been done.
Yeah.
I also think that it's hard because every once in a while there are managers who always go off gut feels, and they've always had successful hires because their biases are highly in tune with themselves, is all I read from that. But they use it as their proof point. So not only is it like they're going to have to say what I'm doing is wrong, how I've done it is wrong, and I need to do change management and pivot, but how can I be contrary to my proof points that are sitting right next to me? So you're exactly right. Because I've seen it.
Right. But we talk about interviewing being a leadership skill, right? So it's those leaders that are like, nope, I've hired on my gut and it's worked every time. Cool. Can you train other people to do that?
Yeah.
Can you scale that within your company? Likely not.
We literally have viral series where it's just there will be an article about a question from some CEO, some tech bro, whatever, and people just take it on, and we literally poke fun at that. Like, if that's your strategy for learning how to interview, is taking on, Elon Musk or, Steve Jobs's, Jeff Bezos, any of their interview questions, like, that's a sign you need training. Like, it's an alert to us. It's one of those red flags she was talking about. But every time we post a video and every time it goes viral and every time we're in the comments, Lorna and I just go, and we see the people that say all the crazy things that literally make our skin crawl. We go, job security. We know that we're still needed.
Yeah.
I love it so much. We talk about this show, and I want to go back to this leadership skill piece of it, because we talk a lot about how the middle manager has not been trained to do a middle manager job, right? Like maybe at a CEO level, you've removed yourself so much for so many things that you're kind of exempt from some of this, but a middle manager that's sitting in it, just trying to hire and try to do this thing, has not been taught how to do the things they actually need to do to perform their job.
Right.
And I think interviewing is one of those, right? It's one of those skill sets that if you were a top salesperson, what skills do you have to interview a top salesperson? Like do you know what I mean? It doesn't, we're not
That's right.
setting people up for success. And I think that's where you guys come in, is that it's really great to be able to train up an organization to say, here's where your organization is sitting with these managers that have never been taught how to do this successfully. And the cost of a bad hire is so significant. You should really work on this.
Yeah, totally.
Totally crazy to me. I just wrote a post about it the other day. Like, the cost of a bad hire, people, is exorbitant.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. The U.S. Department of Labor says it's 30% of a person's salary, but that does not incorporate the employee morale as people leave, right? Because who's the one that gets rewarded with more work when a candidate doesn't, or a new hire doesn't work out? It's your top performers that are already working so hard for you. And you're like, just take on this extra work while we backfill this role. So it's not just money, but it's like slowing down progress on projects. You could lose clients from it if you're constantly, recycling employees that are coming through and having to relearn their business. And yeah, it's just painful, but it's weird that it's not painful enough for some companies to make a change. I'm like, how bad does this have to hurt? Like, if they actually looked at the numbers here, you'd want to change this if you saw this, if you're brave enough to look behind the curtain.
Yeah. I honestly think a lot of people don't connect the dots.
I don't think
people...
we talk about this all the time, about how numbers should connect. Ashley will tell you the breakdown of like how it should connect to lost dollars. And if we were doing our job in talent a little bit better, we would be able to really connect the dots for other people. And we're not doing that successfully. So nothing keeps changing and it all stays the same. If I'm right, Ash?
No, yeah, I would definitely say we have a really hard time, being at the big kids table and not only showing our through lines of impact, but really making other parts of the business see us as an essential business function, and one that is the primary and probably one of the most important ones, because it is what builds out the table that all these people are sitting at that are excluding us. So just to be clear on how that starts and stops. But y'all are exactly right. Being someone who's a professional in talent and then going through that hiring process, it gives you all of those different things where it's like, beep, I see this, I see that, I see that. And it's a completely different thing, but you can truly assess a company based off how they're assessing you and how much communication they give you in that process, probably how well they communicate internally, how much like all those different things, how well organized or disorganized. That's a running theme. If they're showing it to you, believe them.
Totally. Believe them. Don't you guys know that show where it was like the hidden CEO, like they have to go back and like work the entry level job in their own company?
I forget what that show was called.
High level management,
Undercover boss.
Undercover boss.
Undercover candidate is what it should be. Like go through your own interview process and just take some notes.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? I double dug.
That would be a cool series. You should.
Yeah.
But hey, should we start? Is this the one? Let's get people undercover, y'all. And let's go ahead and start the show. Undercover candidate.
Such a broad question. And I don't know that you can answer this in a really concise way, but maybe just give our listeners some tips and tricks about interviewing. What actually makes an interviewer really good in this day and age? What does that look like? How does that feel? And how do we get there? If you could help us out with that would be great.
We just recently recorded a podcast, and I'm not plugging it, but it will come out next week because this is one of our
Plug
favorites.
Away.
Plug it.
Yeah, we call them green flag interviewers, and there are so many wonderful things that we're going to talk about in depth. But to your point, it's a broad thing. I think the biggest thing for me, I'll let Lorna chime in with her favorites, but the biggest thing for me is the two things: is A, you show up in the interview like you know what you're supposed to do there. You're prepared. You know who the person is. You know the role that they're interviewing for. And you at least have prepared in terms of, what information you're planning to extract and talk about, and you have a plan, right, of some sort. That's number one for me, is the preparation. We hear from candidates it is one of the worst first impressions when you sit down and it's like, so what job are you here for again? It's like, what kind of an experience is that? Imagine if I sat down as a candidate and said, what company is this again that I'm interviewing for? Like, you would discount me right away. So that's number one. Number two is transparency. The best interviewers are transparent about the good and the bad. They're transparent about salary, about process.
Yeah.
They let you know what to expect, and they are going to just be transparent in that communication, because that is another aspect that we hear from candidates is like the sort of like, no, you tell me what the salary is, but you tell me what you're looking for. No, you tell me. It's this back and forth. And it's like, at the end of the day, we know the budget, the role has a budget, and you know what a market rate is for that talent. Why is this some secret? Like, to me, the best interviewers are open with that. But Lorna, I'll let you chime in. I'm sure you have your own favorites. Those are two of mine.
Yeah. It's funny because I know Victoria plugged our episode for the Green Flag Hiring Manager that comes out next week, but you should see her face throughout this episode, because like I'm giving everything that I possibly have, like in a 30-minute time frame. And Victoria, every once in a while, she's like, oh my gosh, more? Like, you're going to tell them more? So it's like, that could have been like a 5-hour podcast, and we got it into like 30 minutes. But I will give you my top 2 favorite things that we advise interviewers on, and that's to identify if a candidate can do the job and if they want to do the job. And most interviewers live pretty comfortably, not well, but comfortably in the can they do the job. They know that they're going into the interview to identify if this person can do the job, but they typically don't know to look for, does this person actually want this job? Because just because somebody's capable doesn't mean they want to do it. Just because someone's managed somebody for 10 years doesn't mean they want to continue managing people. So identifying people's preferences in their last role, their likes and dislikes for compensation, management techniques, responsibilities, travel, I mean, anything that you have there, identify their preferences, likes and dislikes, and compare that to your job. That's going to be that alignment fit. When people quit a job after 3 months or 4 months, it's typically not a skill thing. It's typically a motivator thing. Like, it doesn't align. And they've never uncovered that.
Travel's a big one. Yes, you said travel, and it always hits me. People go in these interviews and they're like, oh, it's only 35% travel, and it's really 85%, and they're wondering why the person quit in 3 months, right? Like, those are the things we should be identifying in an interview, your willingness to do those things. And I love that. I love it. Whether they actually want the job is so crucial. Just because they're in an interview, they want to get paid and they want to pay their bills, but I mean, they want that particular job. And I think that's so key. And I love that. I love that framework of that. And I'm going to start using it, by the way, so I'm stealing.
Awesome. That's why we share it. Interviewing should be a two-way street. And I feel like a lot of times, especially in this market, I know we wanted to talk specifically about this hiring market. And it's like, right now it's an employer market, right? Like, candidates are coming in and they are, quote unquote, at a disadvantage based on the job market and unemployment and everything. However, just because if you are in a position where you need the job, we understand, you got to do what you got to do. But as these companies just think candidates grow on trees, they can treat them as they want. And then, they're not really considering the impacts of that wanting to do the job, right? Because yes, like right now people are desperate and they're going to take jobs. But like, if you're not adding that layer in, you're just going to have to redo all the work you just did in a few months. And it's just going to be that constant cycle. So definitely a key component to our teaching and trainings for sure.
Yeah. I think it's essential. I will say I was spoiled in staffing to where they very much drilled in us, like, this whole idea of perfect fit is both ways. Like, if it does not fit them, because you get paid every hour they work. So if they're not going to last, then you're putting in all this effort. So staffing really sets you up in some ways, even whenever it comes to negotiating salaries, unless it's bill rate, pay rate, because then people do some crazy things. But if it's something where you're doing like executive search and you get more on that thing, they're fighting for you. So it teaches you some good, really good habits to carry in, even whenever you're doing corporate for a company, because now you're still making that match. You're much more of a matchmaker versus just a booty and seat filler. I will say one thing that, as y'all were going through your things, one of the things that I always actually judge on, and this is probably going to sound really weird, but the percentage of how much the interviewer talks. And I know that sounds odd, but whenever you think about the fact that you have 30 minutes to do a high exchange of information, half of their stuff is online, at least it should be, or at least given to me beforehand to where I know enough. And then none of my stuff is anywhere that you know of. So if you're going to talk 60 to 70% of the time, and this isn't like the very first one where they may need to explain just to double check that I really want it, unless it's that, if this is the true assessment of skill and you're talking 70, 60, 80% of the time, you're doing it wrong. And I know it for a fact, because what will happen is you will have a good chat and you will feel a certain way, and you will know nothing about that candidate whenever people ask you the questions that really matter. And so that inability to articulate, I also find runs in the same vein of a lot of times they just sat there and probably chatted, gave someone intel, and then just vibed with whatever their response was or wasn't. And that had nothing to do with their skill set whatsoever.
Yes.
But that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. We always talk about conversational interviews have good intentions, but biased outcomes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unstructured and loose-lipped.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I kind of see the communication, like the interviewer talking percentage versus the candidate. I see that as kind of a sliding scale. At the beginning, it's like having the candidate talk about 80% of the time. You have a really structured interview process. You're answering basic questions for the candidate after that first interview. As you go on through the process and you know that the candidate has the skill set and the motivators to work for you, you should be talking more because you want to help them understand how this position aligns, why they can do it, why it's aligned to their motivators, answering all their questions and making sure that you're also a fit for the candidate. So I kind of see that as a sliding scale as you go throughout the interview process.
I actually love that idea of the sliding scale because it is very true. You should be wanting to learn about me, and I should be wanting. It makes it a true two-way street, right? Like it's like I want to hear all the things about the job as a candidate and tell me why almost like I would hate this job. I'm almost like you to negative sell me. I believe in negative selling. So almost negative sell me at the end of the day, and I get to ask all my questions. I know we talk a lot about candidates not asking questions at the end of interviews. It's also one of my things I tell people all the time. Please ask your questions. But to me, that hiring manager has to be ready to answer those questions. And sometimes we find a lot that they're not even ready to prepare to answer them. Right?
You are so right. There was a really high up person at this one company I was partnering with, and I shadowed one of his interviews. And at the end of the interview, the candidate was asking questions, and I sat there and you talked about the negative sell too, but I sat there and I said, you spoke at this candidate for 15 minutes. How many minutes of those were you saying something positive versus negative? And he's like, I don't know, half and half. I'm like, no. 14.5 minutes, you were talking about negative, 0.5% or 0.55 minutes, 30 seconds, you said something good about the company. So it's like, does this person know what they like about the company and the position? Have you done some self-reflection? You'd be like, why have I been here for the last 10 years? Like, write that stuff down. It's like, you have to know these things so that you can relate it to the motivators that you just extracted from the candidate. That is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up because most hiring managers aren't prepared to talk about the job or the company.
They're like, they go into like some zone that's like a weird place. Like, you do work here, right? Like, you know, like be able to fuel some of these answers. And I think that's also why hiring managers struggle when they're like, I don't want candidates to ask me a lot of questions because you don't have the answers.
Right.
But it's such a double standard though, because if a candidate comes in and they're not prepared to ask questions, they're out.
Right.
If, a candidate is asking an interviewer questions and they don't know how to answer them, it's like you're still supposed to beg for the job and to like beg, plead, borrow, steal for this job. It's like, I'm sorry, like we're evaluating you too. And like your answers were trash. Like I will wait for the day because it will come. Just like all things, the pendulum will swing the other way and it will be a candidate market just like it was a few years ago. And let's just see how these processes are going to hold up in that.
I also think it's going to be interesting to see how many people took jobs that they really didn't want or less pay, that candidate market comes back. You're going to have this influx of crazy of like people leaving. It's going to be actually insane. I love it.
I feel like the best companies are going to be the ones that treat it like a candidate market all the time. They're going to be the ones that are okay.
Yes, they will. Because they will have established a candidate care brand. They will have established that they make decisions based off of logic and reason and fairness. And that's something that I think recruiters really, and talent professionals, they really underestimate the concept of like effort justification. Like, how much effort is this person having to put in? How much, like, is our brand worth that? Is this role worth that? Is this market? And so right now, everybody's hot and heavy with all their, I'll do 90 assessments and then never email you back that you did or didn't get this. There's a job that I applied for in 2011 in Austin, Texas. I still never got an update about, and I had to drive all the way down there for an interview. And still to this day, 17 years later, however many years later it's been since 2011, no quick math here, 15. No, wait. 15. I did it. Okay.
Great of you. Brave of you to do math on the spot like that. Well done.
I'm doing my best, y'all. But I will say that, I still talk about the fact that I could easily be employed there whenever they call, like whenever they're ready, I'll be here.
Yeah.
So 17 years later.
We've seen people post like their follow-ups that are like years and years later, and they're like, the person's like, I hope you're still like, if you're still in the market, like, let us know. And they're like, yeah, okay. Like, it's not. And that's one of the things that we hear the most, like, that frustrates candidates, is that like lack of communication, the ghosting, right?
Yeah.
I think we read a stat that like almost like 3/4 of candidates, 75% wait more than 2 weeks to get any type of feedback from the company. And it's like, I don't know. I just think, like, in what world would that be appropriate for any industry in any other scenario? But we do it to candidates. We literally treat them like they don't matter. Like they need to literally be at our beck and call. And green flag interviewers treat candidates like they are also customers. Yeah. And we were actually talking to someone last week at Unleash about this. And when they said that they treat candidates like customers, I just thought that was such a great way of thinking about it. And that's absolutely a big piece of it, of like thinking about the invisible labor, being mindful of all the things that go into going to an interview, right? From a candidate's perspective. Sometimes you're getting childcare, you might be calling off of work. You might be having to lie in some cases about what you're doing, right? Like to get off. And you're doing all of this prep, planning, research, looking up the person on LinkedIn, making sure you have all your answers. And like the interviewer just rolls up like, so why do you want to work here? It's embarrassing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was going to say. They just act like it's all disposable. But here's the thing, and this is one thing that I will say. And I kind of said this in the beginning, but I really mean it now. And it is this. I'm kind of thankful for some people's shitty interview processes because they show you exactly who they are up front. And I feel like especially if you can pay attention to it, right? So, hey, if y'all listening to this, make sure y'all go listen to their episode, because now you'll know where the green flags, where it's like, I do want to work at this company versus not. Because the red flags have saved me so much.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So it's almost like, thank you for being terrible at this too, just like you are in the rest of your job, because now I know. So I appreciate that.
Right. If that's how your experience is in the interview, we always say, imagine what it would be like working for them. If this is the process, if it takes them 9 interviews to make a decision, like on a candidate, imagine what it would be like to get a promotion, to get anything done at this company. Like, clearly their decision-making skills suck. It's just
when you guys go in, you're not recommending these 9 interview processes, I hope, because it's insanity to me.
Right. Yeah,
that's gotta be crazy.
We need a whole entire podcast on just how long interview processes should actually be. And it is a balance here, because hiring managers, they're like, okay, we need to remember that candidates want to be evaluated too, right? If they were to sit down and you grabbed their resume and you looked at it and you said, you're hired, they'd be like, what? That's weird. No, you don't know anything about me. So like the interview process is necessary, and they want to have a couple interviews so that they can know if they're a fit for you as well, or vice versa. So, it depends on the actual like job itself of how many interviews we recommend. But either way, we recommend a guide that follows the candidate through the process. That way there are no repeat interview questions.
So important.
Candidates aren't having to repeat the same stories over and over again. It actually shows some communication among the interviewers that are involved with the process. So as long as you have an interview guide that follows the candidate, it should be pretty efficient.
Yeah. I don't disagree. If you're a CEO, you should go through 9 interviews. Like, you should have the ultimate experience of going through a bunch of interviews and then the board, right? But like, if you're a software engineer, I don't want to see 9 interviews for you. It's like totally ridiculous to me.
It'd be hard for me to advocate for any nine interview process, but I hear you. Like, as you get more advanced, there might be some more.
I said CEO was my only one. I didn't say anybody below him. I didn't say anybody in the C-suite, but maybe a CEO. If you're going to take my company into the journey of whether failing or going, I might have to really scope you out a little bit.
And I will say, kind of just to add in on the amount of interviews for me, at least. I'm curious y'all's feedback, but the way that I think it's best decided is like, again, it goes back to that, what is it that we're seeking and what are those specific traits that actually can reliably and with validity actually assess either the skills or the practice or whatever it is that they're doing that are those tangibles. And so to me, the way it's decided how many you need is based off of how niche is that skill? How much eyes on it do we really need? Is this something that's super coachable? Is this something, and if it's high volume, that changes it as well, like all these different factors and features. But I definitely think that most companies don't ever think of that candidate aspect, like especially not enough. The fact that the word disparate impact even exists should let us all know that the fact that we don't pay attention to those type of things. And even the way that it can affect the difference between a mother versus a father parent in the same, like it's just two totally different impacts. So I do think that it's interesting. Because again, if the purpose of an interview is to collect and exchange information for the sake of assessment, I hate to see people going through it for like just the little gigs and repeating the same things over and over.
Yeah. And I also think, I mean, I love what you said about it depends on like the niche of the position and what type of role it might be. I also think it depends on the partnerships you're building with the people that are on the hiring team. Right. So if you have a recruiter who you don't trust, who, you know, you gave some information to and you said, if they check this box, send them through, and they're sending 10 or 20 candidates at you and you're starting the process, like they already had a screening call and then they're just throwing everyone toward you. That's adding an additional step to the interview process for no reason. So if you can elevate that recruiter hiring manager partnership, then you're actually taking really big chunks out of the interview process every single time you're pushing the candidate forward. So that's one of the biggest things I've noticed. And then also in that interview process management, sometimes there's an interviewer that sends 100% of the people through. That's not a step of the process we need. Like that's not eliminating anyone from the role, you know, from the interview process. So I think that partnership component helps to decide how many interviews you need to.
I think people think that the lack of discretion actually helps them. And it's like, no, if your presence adds no value, then your absence makes no difference. So we can cut that whole entire segment.
I love that you said it. We talk about this on this show more than I can count, is about how if we were better at our jobs, some of this stuff would actually fix itself, right? And so doing that and being a strategic partner to the business and doing that as a real, you know, really thinking about how we're taking those intake calls, how we're doing that partnership, how we're evaluating candidates, how we're tying that back to business outcomes will affect the interview process. And I totally believe that. I love that you said that. It was so spot on to the message that we have all the time. Ladies,
we always talk about tattooing things on our forehead. So just consider that.
I'm going to get like a big tattoo here. That's like, I don't know. I'm going to
full sleeve, Des.
I'm going to get a full sleeve. Hey, by the time RecFest comes, you might not know. You might see I'm going to have full tattoos.
What happens at RecFest doesn't always stay at RecFest, is what I'm hearing.
It's not like Vegas. Ashley,
that's a shame. Don't tell the people.
All I'm going to say is peanut butter shots. That's all I'm going to say.
I can't even rethink that. No, thank you. Go away. No.
Ladies, this is fantastic. This is the time of the show where we talk about the psychological and cognitive side of the topic we've been talking about. Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So obviously this talent outside the box, because I am ill prepared, is also going to come off the top of my head for the 4th week in a row. So let's do it. The main thing that I was going to talk about today is actually 2 things. So one is, how can you tell if your interview process is broken? And the quick answer to this is your data. If it's broken after your hiring manager interview, then that means that your hiring manager and your recruiter maybe necessarily don't align because they're saying, here, you're sending these not great. If it stops after the panel interview, so let's say from manager, it goes to next step, panel interview rejects, then that means you have an intra-team issue. The manager is maybe not aligned with the peer interviewer or vice versa. Or perhaps your manager actually doesn't have a great qualifier and they're your pass-through person who's just passing all these people through and everybody's falling short. If you go to the next and let's say that it falls from peer to C-suite, well, then that means that your executive was not aligned with whatever this happened here. And so for people who work at startups where perhaps your CEO has always been in charge of hiring and is in the garage and now you're growing to scale and all of a sudden they're rejecting every single human you've ever sent, that will let you know where the issue is. So if you want to know the impacts of your assessment process, always be sure to look at that pass-through data and ratio. Second thing I'm going to say, and this is just for the nerds out there, anytime you interview, one of the best things that I have ever implemented was a stage called assessing the assessor. We specifically did it for engineering hire. But what we found was that there were a lot of peer interviewers who did not actually know how to do their job. And we had a fallout rate that was phenomenal that I could not understand until the CTO's referral went through our process, because Undercover Candidate, that's what made me think of this, our new show that we're all coming up with us for. And essentially, the referral actually turned in all of the take home correctly, but our person who was judging the assessment said they were wrong, pushed them out of it, reached out to our CTO, and we said, whoa, our technical assessors are the ones who have actually been wrong. So forevermore, Ashley King implemented a step called assessing the assessors, where anytime that we have a knockoff round due to assessment, those assessors will also be assessed on how to do it, what they would have turned in, and what that looks like. Because how do we know what they're doing if they were hired when they were in the garage and no one assessed them then and no one's assessing them now? Anywho, still some PTSD, but you don't feel that through this podcast. You're feeling great because you just learned about this cool next thing you can add to your talent repertoire. All right, Des, hit it.
It's always a sideshow over here.
It is.
Victoria and Lorna, this is your time to plug all the things you want to plug right now.
Great.
So I'm going to leave it to you.
Sure. Yep. She's going to throw it over to the queen of the socials over here.
Let's do it.
You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Expert Interviewers. You can listen to our podcast at Don't Tell Me Pod. We love it. And then follow Lorna on LinkedIn. So that's where we get in the comments, share a lot, go back and forth, and we have a lot of fun. So come hang out with us. If you want to laugh and if you want to feel like you have a toxic support group for the bad interviews you've been through, like, we're your girls. Come on over.
Love it.
I also love their TikTok. I don't remember if you said TikTok, but I've seen
I did, yeah.
Okay,
TikTok
you did.
and
Okay.
Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in training, or you and your teams need training, or you just want to have a consulting call about it to see if maybe that could be, all that information is on our website, expertinterviewers.com. So that's where you check that out.
I've seen Lorna's stuff and it's hilarious.
No, it is hilarious.
And she's like, I don't know why this is funny. I'm like, because you don't work it.
It does, yeah.
I'm like, because it is hilarious.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
hilarious.
you know, we make it so we can laugh and don't cry. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was like, it is
yeah.
therapy of almost 20 years in the corporate world of training hiring managers. I'm like, this is how I get it out.
I
Makes me feel
love
better.
it so
Good
much.
for
I
you,
love it when
girl.
you're yourself like 3 times because it always makes me laugh. Everyone, I just want to tell you why this show is important. This show is important because interviewing is not broken because people don't care. It's broken because too many companies still confuse familiarity with skill, opinions with evidence, and confidence with actual assessment. The market may be wild, but that does not mean the process of interviewing has to be. Whoop. Thank you so much, Victoria and Lorna, for joining us. We're so glad to have you here. I hope we get to meet up in live and like real person. We're not doing any of the. We didn't do Unleash or Transform or those, but we are doing some things in the fall. I hope to see you there.
Yeah, we hope to see you. Thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Bye.